Now, in that situation, what CDF can do or has done. Um, First, we are putting a stronger emphasis on supporting models and approaches which are actively promoting saving mobilization and deposit taking. We realized, and there is a recognition that microfinance institutions who mobilize saving have tended to fare better in this crisis than others because they didn't rely so much on external commercial source of funding. And at the same time, access to saving services is even more important for a client in times like that, in the sense that it's really a way to keep an asset, to maintain an asset in difficult circumstances. So we are encouraging models which promote savings mobilization, of course, while bearing in mind the conditions that need to be met by institutions who take deposits. One core objective is to ensure that small depositors and savers are protected. So we would encourage a saving mobilization only from institutions who have a license to do so and are authorized to do so. We have launched recently a global facility called Microcredit, which is basically based on the principle of bringing some of the best microfinance institutions from the South to expand their operation in more difficult countries, more challenging markets for us in the least developed countries. And by doing so, we have put a strong incentive for them to develop models which are going to mobilize deposits. So that's, I would say, the first angle of answer on our part. We also are engaged in a very active policy dialogue with the government in the countries where we work, and we will try to see with them what are the measures which are the best suited to answer the impact of the crisis, and the kind of thing that they also shouldn't do, because in a time of crisis the temptation to roll back on certain reforms and it can also be there, and I think we have to be vigilant about how to maintain the condition under which microfinance will continue to grow in those countries. And finally, we also realized even more than ever that the core principle to avoid a lot of the problem which we have seen in our countries is to really develop a proactive agenda on client protection. And the microfinance industry has been very strong in looking at different ways to protect its clients. But at the same time, now we see an awareness at a global level to really promote a number of tools and standards and methods which will help ensure that the microfinance institution have policies and approaches which protect their clients. And here we're looking at a few principles which are fundamental in that respect. First, to ensure that the clients are not over indebted, that they don't receive too much debt compared to their ability to repay. That's the first principle. Secondly, that they get a very accurate and transparent picture of the pricing of the product, that they know exactly what the interest rate is on the product they receive. And finally, to ensure that the collection practices for loan repayment are ethical. Or again, to ensure that any grievance from a client can find a way to be expressed at the level of the institution without the client to feel threatened about that. I think, this, so as I was saying, UNCDF joined this international coalition for client protection in microfinance, which has been led by Action International, an international network, very active in microfinance, and with a number of other partners. So we have committed to really push those principles through all the investment we make and through all the program we have in the field. And we believe that the implementation of those principles will go a long way to enable the client to take informed decision and to feel protected and to get the kind of information that they need to have, which unfortunately we have seen was not at all the case in our countries for a lot of those clients. So that would be in a nutshell, how we see our contribution to answer some of the specific issues which emerge from the crisis. But at the same time, we will continue to promote access to financial services and continue to help a growing number of institutions, and to help develop the right policies in the countries where we work to increase access to financial services. We think that despite the crisis, we need to continue the long-term development effort that we have in this sector, because access to financial services is still very limited in the countries where we work, and I think it's important to continue to increase that access. Well, I think the first lesson is, let's make sure that the principle I mentioned under the client protection agenda are widely spread and implemented. I think they should also become part of the standard reporting, so that any investors who look at microfinance institutions would be able to see whether they implement client protection principles, along the line again that I described. I think that will go a very long way to help ensure that the kind of catastrophic event we have seen in our countries don't happen in the area of microfinance. Then you mentioned expansion in new products, microinsurance and others. I think those principles apply whatever the product is at stake. So I think we should ensure again that these principles are adhered to, and also really focus on financial education and financial literacy, and really ensure that the clients who access financial services are better informed about those services, better understand what is insurance. I mean, what we realize, we are getting involved in the area of microinsurance, and what we realize is one of the key constraints is to explain to clients what is a microinsurance product, what it means to pay a premium without the certainty that you are going to have a return in terms of benefit from the occurrence of the incidents under which you are insured. So I think there is a lot of work to be done on the client education side. And at the same time, I think what we need to do as donors and as CDF is we will continue to support institutions to grow, but be aware of their capacity to grow, their absorptive capacity for new funding, and giving them the means to strengthen that system, to improve their management information system, their back office, their product development services, so that they can continue to grow on a very solid basis. And more to help them diversify the source of funding they have, so that they can also not rely only on commercial source of funding, which can come and go depending on the international context. Again, we have seen some of those cross-border lending diminishing quite dramatically over the last few months. And those institutions who were able to take deposits were much better tools to face the impact of this financial crisis. So we will continue to help institutions to do that. And I think this combination of actions is what I believe a useful contribution to help the industry to continue to grow and help poor people to avail from a larger variety of financial services, while making sure that we set boundaries so that we again protect those clients from the kind of incidents we have seen in our countries with the financial crisis.